psychic conscious business coach, the co-hostess with the mostest. It's Linda Coulter-Burge.
You're so kind. As always, Kat, I'm so excited to be here. And yes, I will be your live stream host. I have one policy: play nice or get out. So we are here to love each other and to explore and to ask questions. So let's do it. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Join our Facebook group because we'd love to continue the conversation there. And thank you all who have given us a nice cup of coffee and helped us make this an even better podcast all the time. So thank you so much. And be sure as you go through this to check out the links below. I'm so excited that we have Angela Anderson here. You guys have been asking for her to be our guest. Hello, Angela.
Hey, how are you today? I'm so excited to be here, guys. I'm so excited, ready to get into it. So,
yeah, we are absolutely excited to have you here. It's just been you being a co-host on the show has just really helped open up the show in this really, really natural, gorgeous, organic way. So, but before we get to know about Angela, let's say hello to our newest co-host. Why, it's Sharon Kumara, Lady Kumara, as I like to call her. Sharon has been on our show twice to share her NDE experience, as well as her ET and otherworldly connections. And Miss Sharon has already interviewed Angela on her show. Can you believe that? She stole our thunder. How could you, Sharon? No, we can't blame you. Angela's great. So thank you for being with us, and thank you for being our newest co-host.
Oh, thank you, Kat. I'm really, really happy and excited too to be here and to share with Angela and everyone here in Preston. We just talked recently as well. And so, I mean, doesn't get any better than this. I can't think of it.
This is a great way. Yeah, you're so welcome. It's a great way to spend your Saturday, that's for sure. All right. And speaking of Preston, let's say hello to the man who has self-published 28 books, has been on too many podcasts to even count, magazines, etc. And now he's appearing on TV as well. It's author, OBE master, UFO researcher, and experiencer, fan favorite, Preston Dennett. Preston, we love you. Thank you for being here.
Hey, I love you too. I am honored and humbled to be here. This is fun.
Oh. All right. So sweet. All right. So let's get into it. Let's talk about Angela's bio. And then we're going to get into our questions. So here we go. Angela Anderson plays the role of wife and mother to a loving husband and two beautiful children who are also creative and artistic like Angela. Angela considers herself a student of life, always delving into learning more and allowing her light to impact that which exists around her. She has spent the last 20 years in the corporate world employed as a software engineer for 4 different Fortune 500 companies. With a passion for health and well-being, Angela spent several years working as an exercise certified personal trainer. She continues to serve as an advocate for health and well-being, but now from the perspective of coming into alignment with the true self. She spends her free time with one of her many hobbies, including reading, fitness, enjoying nature, creating beautiful works of art, and then she gives them away. She just gives them away. And building custom motorcycles. Angela began channeling via automatic writing shortly after the start of 2020. She has since opened to voice channeling and energetic transmission via involuntary body movements. She channels messages from the group Oneness. The energy of oneness is a collective label adopted by beings of the divine Christ consciousness present in aid and support of humanity during this time of great awakening. Angela shares channeled messages on her website, as well as other social media streams, including YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, which are all below in the description box. Angela now offers private sessions to those seeking guidance. And as an advocate of energetic philanthropy, I love energetic philanthropy. Her sessions are completely free of charge with donations accepted as they are gifted. Sessions can be requested via the Energy of Oneness Facebook page or via the Energy of Oneness website, which of course are all below. So if you are excited to know more about this wonderful woman who has gone through a transformation like in such a brief amount of time, and to learn about how you can follow that same your path, but like permission to do it. Angela's giving us permission to do it by giving us a path to do it. Give us some love, give us some comments, give us some thumbs ups, multiple. So Angela, let's crack back to your childhood, turn the pages back, turn the book back, and let's hear about you as a kid when you were connected to oneness and the moment that you said, okay, maybe it's not safe to be connected to oneness? What was that experience for you?
I don't know that it was any one specific incident, but it's just a progressive thing, the way that it played out. So when I was small, I could always see things. I could always hear things. I just kind of knew stuff. And what I saw never really fleshed itself out. So I would see it as shadows or like transparent or translucent beings, if that makes sense. And so I didn't understand it. I didn't have anybody to really talk to about it. And so I had this fear around it. Like really, I would wake up in the middle of the night and see them beside my bed. And in retrospect, I know now that they weren't there to frighten me. They weren't there to be scary, because really they would stand beside my bed and dance, when I was really small. And so I remember like waking up in the middle of the night, running to tell my mom and dad, and they would never get it. They just thought I didn't want to sleep by myself. I just wanted to sleep with them, because you know how kids do, right? And so they kind of never really validated it. As I grew older, though, I could still, I had some of those experiences. They weren't as clear cut as they were when I was younger. But I would attempt to talk about them, and I couldn't really talk about them with my mother, because at some point she brought up the fact that my grandmother's sister was really tapped in, and that she lived it. I mean, she didn't have any shame. She just lived it, and they called her nuts. Like everybody saw her as nuts, right? It's such a taboo type of topic, at least in my community it is, and in a lot of communities it is. But yeah, we never got into it. So I eventually shut it down. I was like, I can't talk about it to anybody. I'm just going to shut it down. But things still happened. As I grew up, things still happened. I could notice spirits in the house attempting to get my attention. Like when somebody would pass, I would typically dream of them, speak with them after the fact, and I would know it. And just different things, them saving me from myself. I always talk about this because it's so true. I remember after my parents got divorced, I spent a lot of time alone at home because I was the oldest. My brother was really young. We're like 7 years apart. So I was by myself a lot. So I had a lot of time to think about things and reflect. And I remember once going outside to feed my dog. And when I went outside to feed the dog, there was a snake. I didn't know it, but I reached down to give the dog water. When I reached for the hydrant, there was a snake, and it was close enough that I saw its teeth. It was reared back like this, ready to strike. And it was about this close to my hand, like close enough that it should have bit me. And in that moment, it was like time stopped, everything froze. And I was like engulfed in this haze. It wasn't really a cloud because I could see through it, but it was like this sparkly haze. And this voice spoke, and the voice said, stop, turn around and walk away. And it was really calm. And I wasn't afraid. I didn't have any fear. I just did what the voice said. I stopped, turned around, and I walked away because the voice said, stop, turn around, walk away, but don't run. And I didn't run. I just turned around, walked away, and went in the house. And I called my mom right away and told her there was a snake in the backyard. And so as I'm in the house, I told her what happened, but as I'm in the house thinking before she got home, I was thinking, why did I get bitten? Because I was close enough that it should have bit me, but it did not. It couldn't. It was like everything froze, like that thing froze and couldn't move. So different things happened like that progressively, like throughout my life. And as I got older, I think one of the last big incidents was me falling down the steps. And I was headed out to work, an internship I had gotten, and hit the landing at the top of the stairs, went to step down the bigger staircase. There's about 20 steps, hardwood steps. And as I get ready to step, my boot heel gets caught in the hem of my pants. And I know in that instant that I'm going to fall down the steps, and there are no rails to grab onto, nothing at all. And I'm falling face first down the staircase. And in that moment, the same voice spoke again and said, just reach out. Because in that moment, in that instant, it was like I said, what can I do to help myself? Because there are no rails. What can I do to help myself? And the voice spoke and said, just reach out. And I didn't even think twice. I didn't even think, what is this voice? Who is this voice? I didn't think any of that. I just reached out like Superman, like this. I reached out and it was like time stopped, like I went black. And the next thing I know, I'm placed at the bottom of the steps on my bottom, looking back up the staircase. And I'm looking back up the staircase and I said, oh my God, what happened? My mom and my stepdad come running down the stairs because my mom she's like crying already before she even gets down the steps because she just knows she's gonna have to call an ambulance to come and get me. But I didn't have a scratch, didn't have a bruise at all. I just turned around and looked up the steps and I'm at the bottom of the steps. So in that moment, I know that there is somebody keeping me from killing myself. There is somebody keeping me, keeping me safe. And I just have this trust. It's like those types of things happened progressively throughout my life. And because of it, I just developed this trust in it, this knowing in it. And with that incident, it was funny because when my mom recalls the incident, she recalls hearing me fall down the steps, like hearing me hit the steps. I don't have that memory. I just have the memory of reaching and being placed at the bottom of the staircase. Yeah. But I didn't have any bruises, none of that. No.
That is wild. I mean,
it is.
It just makes me think about, like, there are people who report these things where, like, something's happening, they're in a car accident, but then they're in a bubble. The car accident happens and somehow they are just completely fine because they go into another place.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of that. I've never shared this little story before. Way back in my early 20s, God bless me, I have probably been saved from myself so many times just by, because I'm a natural born klutz. And so I'm crossing the road. I'm crossing, like this, I'm going for a walk. I'm going to go get some food. I'm crossing the street. But there's cars coming, and I think I must have just timed it wrong. I have an experience of being frozen in time where it's like gung, 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 gung. Like I'm on this little loop while the car passes in front of me, and then poop, I'm released from that frozen state and allowed to walk forward. And I saw you want to coming off mic, Miss Linda. Do you have a question or a thought for Angela?
I was just thinking about how amazing our guardian angels are, because I should have so many times as a child. That picture of the old guardian angel with smoking the cigarette that I post every once in a while. Yeah, that's mine after working. But I can remember jumping off a barn into a haystack with my friend. Now it's like 2.5 stories into this haystack, and I kept trying to hit this one spot, and I could never hit this one spot. Like, as much as I aimed for it, I would go to the left, I'd go to the right, but I'd never hit that one spot. And when we got done playing, as I'm getting chewed out because the father comes out and does it, he pulls a hay rake that was pointing up under that one spot that I kept finding. And it was straight up, it would have just decimated me.
Yeah.
Over and over again. I'm trying to get that. Why can't I get that one spot?
Yeah. Yeah, you weren't supposed to.
No. Listen to us.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's funny how that works. Yeah. So incidences like that have happened throughout my life. And because of that trust that was built, and I just reach and I'm caught and I'm saved, then I just had that knowing that as this voice speaks, that I can trust it, that I should trust it. And I remember when my husband and I were dating, that I was out at his apartment, and that night it started to storm, and I had let my brother borrow my car because I think he had to go to the prom. And so he actually dropped me off. I was by myself out at my now husband's apartment, but it started to storm, and we were watching that design show, Trading Places or whatever it is, right, on HGTV. And watching that show and going back between that and Green Mile, watching between the two shows. So as it started to storm really bad, we went back to the Green Mile because it was on just network TV. And when we went back to the Green Mile, they brought up this warning. It was this weather warning that came across the TV that said, basically, if you can see this, you need to take cover now. And so as I saw that, it was something in me that didn't sit right. So I get up and I go to the window just to look out the window. And I can see it storming, but in my mind's eye, I see this tornado come across the field of where he lived, headed straight for us, coming across the lake, straight for us. And so the last warning was like, if you can see this, you need to take cover now. And I told him, I said, we need to go now. We need to go right now. And so I grabbed my things and I go to the door. And it's like, he almost didn't believe me. You know, he's thinking it's just another one of these warnings, right, that they give, and it's nothing to really worry about. Nothing's going to happen. So he was taking his time, and I'm standing at the door trying to wait for him. And the voice said, you're going to have to leave him. You got to go now. And that's what it said. And when it said that, I started to leave. And as I'm walking down the steps, I'm like, I'm going to have to leave you. I got to go. So I'm walking down the steps, and he finally comes out the door behind me. But no sooner than we get down to the basement, because he was on the third, his apartment was on the third floor. We get down to the basement, go into the little room, and it's basically just a little washroom, right? Go into the little washroom, sit on the floor. As soon as we get in there and sit down and close the door, it's like a vacuum is sucking all the air out of the space. And I know in that moment that that tornado is coming. That tornado is there, right? And so it was like, I don't know, a moment of belief and disbelief at the same time. But the walls are shaking, and it seemed like a lifetime, but it probably wasn't that long at all. And then it was over, and we walk out of the room in the basement. His apartment was on the third floor. Walk out of the basement door, look up, and all we see is sky. Everything is gone. Everything is gone. So then that's another moment of trust. Like I trusted the voice. And if I had not trusted the voice, then we wouldn't be here. Because he lost everything. Everything.
That is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Preston, hop in, Preston.
Yeah, I just want to underline what Linda said and about the power of our guardian angels, our guardian spirits, because what fascinating to me is like with the snake incident this is something that's so random and unexpected and hard to predict. And the fact that that voice was there at that moment just shows, I think, how closely watched over we all are. And that's fascinating to me. That, I mean, because how would they know a snake is going to be there at that moment?
Right.
And the incident with the steps, I had to smile at that one too, because that I've heard that exact story from other people. Robert Monroe, who you may know is a very well-known out-of-body guy, and he had the same exact incident that you described. He was walking down the steps, one foot crossed over the other, I think, or he stepped on a shoelace, something like that. And he's flying down. He's like, oh, this is going to end up in a broken bone. But nope, he floats down the steps softly. And happened later again that year. He stepped on this, I think it was the same steps. They were icy. And he's like, well, this is going to end bad. And nope, he kind of just floated down. And I have to tell you, I've heard this from other people. Yeah, it's just amazing how protected we are. And that's how important it is to listen to that voice, because how many times have you regretted it for not? I can tell you it's happened a couple of times to me because it's subtle, it's very subtle. Sometimes for me, I should say. But yeah, and also one more thing real quick is you talk about being a little girl and telling your parents about this. I have interviewed so many people who are, as little kids, had these paranormal experiences and go running to their parents like, oh, these beings came into my room. And almost always the parents are like, you had a dream, shut up, this sort of thing. And I just want to reiterate, if there are any parents out there watching, listen to your kids. these experiences start very young.
Yeah, and they are so valid. And that's one of the things I think, that's one of the, I don't want to call it a generational curse, but that's one of the things that I've sought to curtail with my kids. Like, I listen to them every time because I've experienced it. I know it's valid. And so I go with them downstairs, and I've even sat with them and explain, help them to understand it, because it is valid. And I don't want them to ever think that they have to shut it down and cut it off, that they are in full power and ownership of what they allow themselves to witness and see, that they have full control over that, and they can speak to it and say, I'm ready for this, or I'm not ready for this, and dictate it that way. So they are in control of that. And I validate them every time because I know it's legit. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, there always also seems to be the odd person out in the family.
Yeah.
Like the one person who's like reporting all these weird experiences. Trust me, I know this. I've had 5 brothers and sisters, and they're kind of looking at me askance sometimes. Like, stop talking about out-of-body experiences. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, they're real. Come on.
It scares people, doesn't it? I think it scares people when you talk about out-of-body experiences and things like that.
Yeah, but we
It's
all
scary.
do it. It's just that everybody's
Right.
not conscious of it. We do it every night, every
Right.
single night. It
Yeah.
happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to share real quick.
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
a stare experience not too long ago,
Okay.
actually. And what happened, I didn't hear a voice. I knew I was falling. And we have stone steps down here outside at where I live at the house. And I knew I tripped. And I'm thinking, this is not going to be good. I was thinking that. And as soon as I thought that, I'm down at the bottom of the steps. I don't remember hitting anything. I don't remember falling or anything.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was pretty crazy. And I wasn't hurt.
Yeah.
And I was carrying a cup of soup, and I was thinking, oh man, I love this soup. I'm going to spill my soup. and I still had my soup in my hand.
Wow. That's wild. Wow.
I know.
There's so much support once we give into it, and once we stop being so domineering of what's going to have to happen. Like, nope, there are other options. Calm down. There are other options. I want to be like, when people say, stop talking about your OBEs, stop talking about your boring linear life. like, we hear about that stuff all the time. Let's talk about what's exciting. And then also, Angela's kids are freaking amazing. If you follow her on Facebook, like they're artistic, they're creative, they have a fun time together. Like, anyway, I think the whole kit and caboodle is so inspiring. All right, Miss Angela, let's talk about it. Let's get into it. Oh, I'm getting excited. Okay, let's get into where the oneness started to kick back in, and you were like, uh-oh, this is coming back, and I'm going to have to stop denying it. I'm going to have to stop giving it a back seat. It wants to come into the front seat.
Yeah.
Crack that egg open for us.
So this came as a result of, I guess, marriage. Marriage is a perfect classroom, right? Because you're with somebody 24/7. So you get that chance to see yourself reflected in the other person. And that's what kind of came up for me. And being a child, like, my mom went through a divorce with my dad, and then she ended up marrying again. And then that relationship wasn't, I guess, as ideal as it could have been. There are some things that played out, some abuse, and some things that played out that kind of dictated the way that I saw the world and myself, so to speak. So I was cautious in a lot of ways. I made sure that as a result of what I saw, I was really a stickler for making sure I didn't make those choices that would put me in similar situations. I didn't want to fall back into that. I didn't want to repeat a cycle, if that makes sense. So it was like, in my marriage, I was really cognizant of that, really cautious of that, but I saw situations starting to play out where I was giving over my power to my husband, basically. And he is a very gentle soul. He's very sensitive. And I know, in retrospect, looking back on it, that he was playing a role to bring me out. I know that without a doubt, right? But he got to a space where he started to run our household like a business. So rather than it being a companionship, partnership, it became like almost a dictatorship. And I'm like really artistic, really expressive. So my spaces have to reflect that. And they always have. So every time we've moved, I've done the decorating, the painting, the artwork for the house and all that stuff. And we got to a space where it was like every time I offer up a suggestion of something I'm thinking of doing in the house, it was like, you don't need to do that. You shouldn't do that. Don't do that, you know? And it was kind of like that. And I started to resent it because I felt like I was being stifled, held back. And I got to a point where I was so angry with him that we had to just have this talk. And we've never been the couple that argued, had these big heated debates, you know, arguments and stuff. We always been able to come to a space of calmness and speak. So we've always been able to listen to one another in that way. But in this instant, we were speaking, but I was angry, and I was really angry. I was so heated. And just like that tornado warning that we saw on television, you know, you hear those warning sirens start to go off. When I was speaking to him, it was almost like I was hearing that same type of siren. So I knew this was something I really needed to pay attention to. And so as I'm having this discussion with him, giving him what I'm seeing, you know, because I'm in this state of victimhood where I'm the victim, I'm playing the victim, and he is to blame for it, right? So I'm having this discussion with him. But as I'm having this discussion with him, I'm having this discussion with myself. It's like this siren brings me to a space where I'm having two conversations at once. I'm speaking to myself. And as I'm speaking to myself, I'm saying, what is this showing you about you? Why are you allowing this? Why have you allowed this? What are you seeing in yourself? Because this is showing you. You know, life is a mirror. This is what I was telling myself on the side as I'm speaking to him. And I snapped, like it got me, like I woke up in that moment. And it was like the anger instantly went away. And the object of angst turned from him to myself. And I spoke to myself, and I realized that I was yielding my power to him. And I was angry with him because I had developed in my mind a standard of what he should be, right? But I wasn't allowing myself to be what I needed to be, what I was called to be, who I was authentically. I wasn't letting him be who he was authentically, and I was judging him for it based on the standard that I had established in my own mind of what he should be. But I wasn't being who I had been called to be authentically in that moment. And it was like in that moment I woke up and I realized that I had to let all that go. And this was the time for me to be me. It wasn't my job to dictate what somebody else should be, right? And in that moment, that's when I got it. And I had been watching, that's when I had been watching current shows all along. And I realized it was time for me to own me, every aspect. So as I'm sitting there having that conversation with myself, it was like, you got to own it all. And I flashed back to everything, every incident that had happened over the course of my life, everything that happened when I was a child. I had to own it all, the full gambit. And it was not an option, me owning it. I had to do it. And so that's when I reached out to her and I joined the Inner Sanctum. And I spoke to her. And when I spoke to her, she basically validated everything that I already knew. Everything that I already knew, and how I had carried some things based on things I learned as a child, things I had been ingrained in the DNA and carried forth in the lineage and all that stuff. And I just decided it was just time to own it. And when I did own it, I realized that I had to subsequently tell my husband everything. And so it was almost like a coming out party where I had to sit and tell him everything, right? So in the moment of considering even telling him, I was fearful in a sense because I knew that he could take it how he chose. And there was a risk that he would hear it and be so overwhelmed and so freaked out that he would be like, I'm done. I'm heading for the hills. This is it. I can't go this route, right? But I was like, I don't care what the risk is, because I can't risk not being me. I can't, that won't, I can live with myself not being who I know myself to now be, right? I can't live this falseness. I can't wear the mask anymore. I have to be me, no matter the cost, right? And so I told him, and as I told him everything. I went through every childhood event leading up to the present day. I went through everything. And it took him a minute, and he was a bit overwhelmed, obviously, right? Because it's a lot. If you're not even into the woo-woo stuff, but like just hearing this is just overwhelming. But he embraced it, and he said, I don't understand it, but we'll work through it. And that's been his mindset the entire time. And he's opened to it. And I've seen him yield to different things and open and embrace more than he ever thought he could or would. But that's kind of moved us to a different state in our relationship. So whereas we came together as these two kids, who really didn't know a lot about each other, who were wearing these masks and being who we thought the other person needed us to be, to a place of authenticity where we have the safety to be who we are, just as people, just as living our lives. So it's moved our relationship, our bond, to a different state of being. Yeah.
I just want to like pause here and celebrate that, because how many of us are terrified of coming out to other people, or have been, like we all have this moment where it's like, shit, I got to be all myself. And this means saying goodbye to the old self, where the ego is nestled in, doing all the control, doing all the power, doing all the narration of what's happening, and finally pierce that veil and come to the other side. And yes, there are layers and there are levels, but there's always that moment where Superman is like, fuck, I gotta be Superman, and I can't be Clark Kent anymore. I need to cross over, or Wonder Woman, or whatever that is. And so I just want to pause, because it's terrifying. And to go through that death, I mean, and maybe it's not for everybody, but for me, it has been, I'm going through a death rebirth process. And there are parts of my psyche that are freaking out and just, want to like seize the reins, want to regather control and say, no, abort. And it's like, I can't go back to being the old me. I can't do it. And I just want to honor everybody's experience of that. And if you haven't experienced it yet, you're going to. And you do that in a community of people that love you. Do that with us. Like, we're here to help you rebirth and to go through your regenesis, because we love you and we accept you right where you are. What would you like to say, Mr. Preston?
Yeah, I just want to underline that and put it in bold and add an exclamation point because it's awesome. It's just so amusing to me, Angela, because my brother is profoundly skeptical, or was, of UFOs and ghosts and life after death. And who did he marry but my sister-in-law, who has a long list of paranormal experiences. And it's just so funny to see him react to when, she doesn't really make him uncomfortable talking about it. But me, I've always been unfiltered. I cannot help but just tell the truth. And they always call me inappropriate Preston. I'm like, what? I can't help it. I'm just saying what I'm thinking. And I wish everyone would be a little bit more unfiltered. I try to put my filters on at work just because, it's polite. But even then, I sometimes get myself in trouble by just going places a lot of people won't go.
Yeah, you know what I'll say? Fear is just a thought. And I've known this for a long time. Like even before I began to hear it, I've known fear is just our thoughts and beliefs, something we've come to believe because we've told ourselves that thing over and over and over again. But as I was telling him that, I felt that fear, but I knew it wasn't real, right? So I could see it as what it was and move through it in that way. But I'll say, as I've embraced feeling the fear and doing it anyway, like I can feel the fear and do it anyway because I know what fear to be. That as I've embraced embodying me, my truth of being, that it's served as a draw for other people. And so it's given the people around me, whereas in the past, I've felt because I've been able to see things and know things, and I've attempted to try to save, or I saw it as my responsibility to save them and help them in some way. I've allowed them to be and just focused on myself and allowing myself to be that authentic self is served as the draw to bring them out. So whereas my mother wouldn't even speak about this kind of thing, she now has the safety to embrace it. So I've been able to do like some energy work with her in that respect, whereas it was so taboo, we can't even go there. Right. So even as I've been more authentic and been able to stand in my truth, it's just served as a draw and created a safe space for the people around me to do the same. So I honestly believe that's how the world gets changed. It's by us embracing our truth and allowing that truth to serve as the draw, to draw it out of the people around us. And that's how it spreads. You don't have to be so dogmatic in your approach and thinking it's your task to heal the world, to save the world, because it's not your actions that do that. It is simply your ability to be and to stand in your truth of being that changes that which exists around you. Yeah.
Powerful. And I wanted to say that I mean, this is amazing. Everyone's journey is so different, and I just want to honor everyone's journey. It's so powerful, and wherever you are is perfect in your awakening. Sharon, I see you want to hop in, and Preston, I want to say that Elizabeth from our chat said instead of inappropriate Preston, it's authentic Preston.
Right.
And I just thought that was so generous and loving. Hit it, Sharon.
Oh, just real quickly, I just wanted to, well, first of all, thank you for what you just said. That's so important for us to be our authentic self and to show, because people see that and it gives them permission, like I believe Kat was saying, or you said, yeah, it's just so important. It took me quite a while, about 44, 45 years for me to wake up kind of thing to my authentic self. And I had those same types of intuitions where I was in a relationship and it was not working for me, And that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, was let him know that I needed to move on, because there was no more room in our relationship for my expansion if he wasn't going to expand with me. So I applaud you and your husband for being able to work through that together, because it doesn't always work out that way. And I have clientele that are going through similar types of things with their relationships. So that's, I love hearing that it does work sometimes like that. Yeah. Thank you, Angela. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, let's swing into your support. And it's, again, this is, progressive awakening. It's so apropos to this. So let's talk about Sweetie Swaney, the Karn Swain that lives in Australia, who has been a support to so many of us. She definitely supported me in the genesis of the show. So let us know about your guides lovingly shoving you in the direction of Karn Swain, saying, do it, do it, do it. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this was last year. Like this has been really quick. So my, like the channeling and owning all of this just happened like early part of last year, right? This is when I just kind of came back into myself. But what happened was I was watching her shows. I had been watching her shows all of, say, 2019, right? Just watching shows. And then my husband and I had this kind of rift early 2020. And I kind of knew that it was time to take ownership of me. So that's kind of when that happened. And after that happened, and I decided it was time to own me, that's when I decided to join the Inner Sanctum. So to that point, I hadn't even ever gone to her website. So I had just watched her shows on YouTube, decided to go out to the website, take a look at things. And I eventually decided it was time to join because I guess I was getting that push, right? I kept hearing this voice, the voice that said, you know, you need to join the Inner Sanctum. You should join the Inner Sanctum. And I was like, I would go out to the website, or I went out to the website and I saw the prices. And the first time I went out, I just looked at the price and I was like, I'm not doing that. And then I was like, if I join, my husband's gonna think I'm nuts, you know, talking to this group of people or whatever. And I was like, I'm not doing that. But I went back out to the site at another time. It was like later that day, same day. And I realized it was Australian dollars versus US dollars. And I guess for me in that moment, it made it a little bit more palatable. So I was like, well, I could join the group. We'll see what happens. And to my surprise, after I joined, she contacted me right away. And I was immediately freaked out because I was like, okay, now I'm gonna have to talk about it. She doesn't know me, I don't know her. She's, you know, this is gonna be weird, you know, and all this stuff. But leading up to our meeting, this is funny. I didn't tell you this in our pre-show chat, but leading up to our meeting, this is how I knew it was in divine order. I was at work and I was thinking about it all day. Like, I think I had to meet with her after work, like 5 or 6 or so. During work, I woke up with it on my mind that I was going to meet with her all day. So this is me giving voice to what I'm feeling and all this stuff. So I'm really owning it, right? But throughout the day, I saw all the angel codes. So 111, it was really distinct and stark. It was like it came to my attention. So 111, 222, 323, 333, 444, 545, and I think 555. And at 6 o'clock, we were supposed to meet. I knew it was in divine order because those numbers were distinctly in my awareness. Like every time I looked at a clock on the hour, it would be some number like that, right? So I knew it was in divine order for me to sit and talk to her. And when I did, it was just her validating what I already knew. Yeah, I was in tears the whole time talking to her, but that was like the gateway, the opening to me giving. It was like in that moment, I gave myself permission. I gave myself permission to be it, right? And everything started to happen so fast after that. Everything started to come after that. I started to listen and I started to get conscious about what I was hearing. So what she suggested in that meeting was establishing a protocol of how to hear and know that my guides are speaking to me. So I was like, she suggested a protocol. So to that point, I was familiar with the way a pendulum works, right? So I said, okay, so I'm going to ask a question of you guys. I'm speaking to my guides. I'm going to ask a question and I will be the pendulum. My head will be the pendulum. This is how the motion started. So I said, if I ask a question and the answer is no, I want like the head movement to be no. If it's a yes, let's go with this. And if it's a maybe, let's do one of these things right here, right? Where it's to the side. Something physical that I can feel and I can know that you are responding to me, like I'm being responded to. And no sooner than I've set the protocol, this is my protocol, this is what I'm working with, then they started to respond to me in this way. So I'll ask a question and it happens now. Like if I'm sitting speaking to somebody, if I'm doing a session, if I'm sitting listening, co-hosting in the mornings, if somebody's speaking and I ask my guides just any question, I think of a question, typically they'll respond and see it's happening now. So I'll get a yes, or I'll get a no, or I'll get a maybe. And this is kind of how the movement started. But this was my protocol that I set so I would know for certain that I'm hearing what I'm hearing. It's validating what I am am receiving. So I would tell anybody, if you're starting out, to develop a protocol that works for you. It doesn't have to be what mine is. It can be sensations on the different sides of the body. It can be temperature, feeling a shift in the temperature. It can be anything that will bring to your awareness confirmation of what you are receiving. Yeah, it serves.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I feel like there's so much there to unpack. The again, this progressive line where you are, the key point is surrender. Like, I mean, when we were talking the other day in our pre-show chat, that was the point where it's like, oh, it's surrender. It's all about surrender and trust. It's all about surrender and trust.
Yeah.
And again, for people who might have some control issues, you know, like there's, oh, and this says me too. And Sharon, okay. And so it's like being able to do that, because you know what if it's wrong? What if that's information's wrong? And then, oh my God, I can't trust myself. Oh my God, can I trust anything I ever get? I like, that's where the slippery slope comes in, is that point of like, oh, it's a disconnection. Like, see, I can't trust you. See, I'm alone. Like, or whatever the ego's narration is of why I can't trust you. This proves it. And, you know, I think we probably have all had moments where our guidance guided us to do something and you're like, what the bleep was that about? And it's like, well, calm down. It's not what you were expecting. Can you listen without expectation? Can you listen without expectation? No. Oh, well, then it's going to be a little bumpy. So like, if you can listen without expectation and then keep listening and then get what we're trying to show you, you're going to get it. But if you are judging and criticizing and controlling the entire way, well, guess what? Bumpy ride. You know, like that's going to be really hard. Hop in, Linda.
Yeah, I'm going to add one, not just expectation, but negotiation.
Yeah, right.
How many people have negotiated? I'll do this, but you need to do this in exchange. You know, I'll do this if. And yeah. And every time I've ever done that, it's like, well, that looks like another lesson to learn. Just add that.
I think it was so good for me, at least, because for the physical movements, in order for the movements to happen, I have to surrender my physicalness. It makes sense. I'm surrendering physically. I let my body go limp. Like literally, I relax and let my body go limp, and then it is moved in this way. The movements come in this way, and it just flows. And I sit back within myself almost as an observer, and I can see it happening. And I just get so fascinated sometimes. I'm like, that is so cool. But it's just movement that happens once you surrender yourself. And so as I was able to surrender myself physically, then the other just kind of fell into place. It was like a non-issue, right? Because the physicalness is what gives us the perception of limitation. Once you can move beyond that physical limitation, you are truly unlimited, because you no longer see yourself in that as that physical beingness. You see yourself beyond that physical beingness. You are the force that animates, permeates, and enfolds the physicalness. You realize that. You come into a great understanding of that. And so you're able to yield to it. You're able to yield to it and give over to it. So it becomes a moment of integrated collaboration with your bigger aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. If I could jump in real quick. Okay. So Angela and I talked about this before. I also use my body as a pendulum during any type of that work and channeling and everything, which is when you're the first person I ever heard that does that as well. So it's a really good way to be able to trust the information you're getting from me. And but as far as confirming that we are so much more than our physical body, as Robert Monroe says, I had an out-of-body experience early on in my travels where I left my body and I stepped away from the bed. I'm walking because I try to get away from my body as quickly as possible. And something told me to turn around, and I looked at the bed and I could see someone laying in the bed, and blonde hair, covers up to here. And I'm thinking, who is that? I did not recognize that body as me. I'm thinking, who's in my bed? And it hit me, that's my body. It took a couple seconds, I guess, but you know how the information flows. And I thought, oh, that's my body. I had no attraction to it, I guess you could say. I didn't feel any type of attachment to my body. I actually, even though our bodies are beautiful and wonderful, the thought that came to my mind was a bag of bones, to be honest with you. That was my vehicle, my car kind of thing. And I realized that this light being who's traveling outside of her body is the real me. This consciousness is the real me. And it's so much more than our physical bodies, because we're so used to being attached and identify ourselves as our physical body.
Yeah.
I think that is, Linda, hop in.
Yeah, I want to bring up, because it's come up in the other podcast that I was on, a lot of fear coming up of to trust. How do you trust what you're getting? That it's not demonic, that it's not a trickster, that it's not, that where this information is coming from. So I would love everyone to talk about that.
I can speak to that one. Yeah, I had this. I'll say I have this fear that I carried to a certain point because of the way that I grew up, the way that this type of thing was seen in my household. It was seen as evil, it was seen as demonic, that type of thing. And so in the very beginning, as I started to ask who was giving me information, I would receive names, and I would judge based on the name. And this association that I held on some level, I don't even know where it came from, but on some level, I would associate this name with something negative, right? And so I eventually asked, I just stopped asking for names. And I realized that energy will meet you wherever you are. Frequency exists at all levels. So if you attach at any point, you are going to get what aligns with you vibrationally. This is something I learned very early on, right? So what I made it my goal of doing was making sure that I get into the heart, get into the space of the heart first. Because if I respond, or if I seek to connect or align with spirit, if I'm pissed off, then I'm going to get energy that aligns with that frequency and vibration of being pissed off, and it's not going to be good. It's going to align with that, and it's going to keep me there. I'm just going to be on that level, basically. But my prerequisite is always getting into the space of the heart. So that's breathing and getting centered first. That's the very first move. And once you are on that level, then you don't have to worry about something coming at you that's demonic or evil, something you may fear, because as you perceive things in a fearful way, you are going to create that, because we create our experience by what we believe. So if you believe something to be fearful, you're going to get what matches that. But if you know yourself to be operating from the space of the heart, then you are going to get what aligns with the heart, and you can feel it. And so there's never a need to fear when you are operating from the space of the heart. So I never hold a fear. And if I'm in meditation and a thought comes that may bring me to a space, that kind of space, then I confront it for what it is. So I know that I'm always in control, and I have the ability to adjust to any level of frequency at any moment by what I choose to believe and hold in that moment. So I would face it. And when I first started, I had this, because I didn't understand, balancing the frequencies, balancing myself, that I had the ability to control that. So I would confront it. And I got this from Paul Selig. He says to face it, and you acknowledge it for what it is. So if there's something that causes you to feel a sensation of fear, you look at it, understanding that all is divine. There is nothing that exists outside of God. So you look at it and you say, I know who you are in truth. I know what you are in truth. I know how you serve in truth. You are free. You are free. You are free. You are acknowledging the divinity in it. It is not separate from God. And in that instant, there's a shift that happens. There's a shift that can occur and bring you back into alignment with the space of the heart. So there's never any reason to fear. You are always in control, and you manage it by allowing yourself to operate from the space of the heart and knowing that you are in control, and you can bring yourself to the space of the heart whenever you get out of alignment with that. So there is no fear, and you are always in control. I tell a lot of people this because a lot of people I know speak in fear. How can I trust it? What if something's trying to get me? Where if that only happens if you believe it so. You'll create it if you believe it so. But if you know that you are the creator of your experience, and you are, once you own this and know this, you know that you are in control, and you dictate what happens in your experience.
Angela, that is like the crux of it all. I feel like,
yeah, it is.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Preston, I'm sorry, I see Linda's nodding and Preston's off mic. I don't know. Preston, did you want to hop in?
Yeah, I do. I love what you're saying, Angela. It reminds me of, Seth and Jane Roberts,
the
Seth material. He had a phrase that always stuck with me, that the universe is safe.
Yeah.
And that there is nothing to fear. We are absolutely a part of this universe, and that will never change. And fear is a lie. And I've studied channeling. Boy, have I studied it. I've got books on it. I've got books on demonic possession too. And because I'm often asked about this sort of thing, like, oh, aliens they're demonic, channeling, blah blah blah. No, we all channel all the time. There's no woo-woo factor to it. Cooks channel, athletes channel, artists, dancers, all of this is channeling. Anything you do that's even remotely creative is channeling. And I felt it, being an author, when I'm sometimes writing. There's been a few times I'm like, am I even writing this? This is coming up. Where is this coming from? I remember one time I was just writing about, spiritual enlightenment and how to do it. And I was just thinking about it. And suddenly I felt compelled to write. And it was almost like automatic writing. I wrote this little essay about 10 steps towards attaining spiritual enlightenment. And I put it aside and I brought it back and I read it. I'm like, I don't know if I even wrote this. This is amazing. And certainly that's how Jane Roberts started channeling Seth. She fell unconscious and wrote this essay, The Universe as Idea Construction. And that's how it kind of all began for her. But I just want to sort of remove the woo-woo factor to channeling. No, it's something we all do.
Yeah.
You can feel it when you're in the groove, when you're riding a bike or driving down through LA traffic. I feel it sometimes. Like, whoa, I just narrowly avoided an accident. So it's just being human. That's what it is.
It is. And I want to speak to something that you said on how you get started. But one of the ways that I got started was through the automatic writing. And I've spoken to people who've attempted to try automatic writing and say to themselves, well, this doesn't work for me. But you have to understand that it's a process. It's like you are bringing your body into alignment with a belief that it's possible. So when I started to automatic write, I got my pen and I got my notebook and I just put pen to paper and I said, okay, I want to write. Let's write. This is what I said as I sat down. And as I set that intention, I just let my hand go limp and held the pen. And the pen, my hand felt funny, but it eventually started to move. But what came through was just scribbles, right? Just scribbles. And I spoke with one lady in a session and she said, well, all I'm getting is scribbles. And I was like, the scribbles play. The scribbles are part of the process. The scribbles are you being calibrated into alignment with your intention, right? It's part of the flow. It's part of the first steps. Babies don't come out writing cursive, right? It's a process. You got to learn how to write. So it's like you are teaching your physicalness how to function being operated solely by spirit, not by the mind, not by the conscious mind. You're being moved by spirit. So you have to learn that. It's an alignment to the process. So as those scribbles came, I would ask the question, am I being calibrated to something? Yes, you are. It's a process. So I would sit down the next night and those scribbles became small words, like a simple hi or something like that. They became small words. And then they moved from small words into fragments, sentences, and then it became pages. And then it became pages and pages of just words. I would have a concept, or I would ask for just a topic or something that helps humanity, at this time. And it became even more and more. So you don't get discouraged, is what I'm saying, with the process of automatic writing, because it's a process of coming into alignment with the belief, the knowingness that you have that this is possible and this is something that I can do. You have to move the physical body into alignment with the truth of who you know yourself to be.
Hit it, Linda. You have no experience with this, do you, Linda? This is all
None
foreign to you, is it? I thought so.
So that's like, oh, there's this point and this point and this point. First point I want to talk about. First point I want to talk about is when I hear demonic possession, when I hear all of those things, I remember watching a show, or actually my first one was, I was friends with a priest from Mexico. And he would joke, and I asked him, he was like the priest to do all of the exorcisms. And it was funny because he would say, oh, that stuff is nothing. He says, what really terrifies me are the people that believe it. He was like, the other side, I'm not worried about that. That's energy. That can leave, but it's all the belief systems that are placed around it. And this was the priest that was doing it, that had that thought. And so I think about the cultures that, really tie that into their belief system, and they're creating that for themselves. Because you look at how many have that in that culture versus a different culture that doesn't, right? And so, or an Aborigine culture may look at that as a healing, a process, not a demon. So it's all how we perceive that reality that we bring into this. And so that was my first one. My second one was, if you really are struggling too with automatic writing, an exercise that I did that kind of fast tracked that for me was write the question in one hand and the answer in your write the question in your dominant hand, the answer in your non-dominant hand.
Yeah.
Because it gets you out of your head. Yeah. So
that's great.
That's it.
No, that's really good. And it's I'll just reflect here real quick and then we'll move on. Because it's the difference. Like, I love like Dead Files. I love shows where they're like, we're kicking the demons out, or there's things that are going on. Like, I still have a fascination for that. And yet I know, and I, God bless Amy Allen. I really do love her, but she has like these elaborate prescriptions to cleanse and clear the space where it's like, you need to get a witch doctor that has a lazy left eye and is missing a right tooth. And like this like, it's like, what? Like, sometimes it's so complex. And it's like, you could do quantum healing on the house and the space and it would change. Like, if you literally did quantum healing, the entire energy would be transformed. But like, there's no drama in that, right? So like, what is our belief system attracting in the desire for drama and having this dramatic, like, oh, it's a fight, it's a struggle. It's a choice, you can or you do not have to. So let's hop into then. You've talked about your protocols, and we do see you do this on the show. Like, when we're asking questions, we'll see Angela's head moving, like she'll do something and she's doing something in the background. It's like, oh, Angela's getting something. Toss the mic to Angela. And so let's talk a little bit now in terms of how this ability to connect goes into speaking with trees, with the wind, and with dragons.
So I'll say I'm just getting into the heart space. And okay, I'll start here. Last year, when we had the lockdowns, I've never been one who wanted to work from home. I've never been that person who wanted to just be at home all day, but I was at home all day. And so I would make time to get outside. And I just started getting outside to take a walk. And my walks, I was really into fitness, but because I needed to get out of the house, I wasn't getting out of the house to see how fast I could walk. I was getting out of the house just to take a slow walk, just to be outside and just connect and just be out of the house, really. But as I did those walks, these extra slow strolls through the neighborhood, I started to connect, and I started to realize that I could hear everything, that everything speaks. The rocks speak. So in that Bible verse that says the rocks will cry out, this is accurate because the rocks do speak. Everything holds consciousness and can speak, and you can hear it all. And so as I would take my walks, they became less of an escape to more of a communion with nature. That's what they became. And I started to just open to what nature had to say, how it came to speak. And I could hear this flow and this frequency, and I could feel it as I walked. And so that's kind of how I moved into that space. And I'll say most recently, within the last month, is when the light language started to come. And I'll say this for people who don't understand it or know what it is. Consciousness speaks, spirit speaks in frequency and vibration. And we, as the instruments, have the ability to translate that frequency in any number of ways. And one of those ways can be through sound. It could be through movement. It could be through speaking the words, but it can come through as sound. And for me, that started to come through within the last month of light language or energetic language or an energetic transmission, however you want to term it. The label doesn't matter, is what it is. But just starting to speak it. And so what I realized in speaking it as I would walk, I started to speak the light language as I would walk. And the dialect I noticed is different between beings that are being spoken to. So if the wind is blowing and I choose to speak to the wind, where it's this real bellowy type tone that comes through as I'm speaking to the wind, there's a difference. If it's the trees, then the dialect is different in what comes through for the trees. That's because the frequency, there's a difference in frequency. The frequency that's held within the trees is a difference. If I'm speaking some receiving galactic energy, for instance, or angelic energy, for instance, it's all different. It all plays in a different way. That's because the frequency of vibration between the entities or the beings is just different. It just is what it is. But that's how that started to come about. And now I can just get in the heart and just open myself and it just comes. Yeah.
Okay, let's hear about dragons.
Well, it's the same. It's the same. So I haven't been one who's asked for sources, but I've known that I carry that as an energy as well, and what it yields to me. I've always been sensitive, and growing up, I was exceedingly shy. I mean, really shy, right? And I will say hated, because I really hated it, being in front of crowds and speaking in front of crowds. But the dragon energy is with me because, okay, guides come to help you in various areas that you need assistance in. And that's one of the areas that I obviously needed assistance in, is that confidence, that assertiveness, that ability to stand my ground, stand in my power, and be able to deliver a message with clarity and confidence. And that's what that dragon energy yields to me. And when I channel the language of light from the dragon energy, it's a very stern, assertive, confident type of delivery. There is a difference, but there are guides in many forms that we all have with us. Our team is not comprised of all those who have just been human. There is more to this creation than just us. And what exists on this planet, we have many beings who have held many different forms accompanying us, and they are able to help us in many different ways and bring to us what we need in the moment as the creators who exist on the leading edge of creation. Yeah.
I am so intrigued. I'm so intrigued. You are so in your body and so in tune. What does it feel like when you are channeling the dragon energy?
So I was thinking about this the other day and how to articulate it, because it's not something that you can easily articulate it. And I'll tell you this, I came across a video of Esther Hicks, Abraham speaking through Esther Hicks. And I remember hearing these words a long time ago, and I didn't really get it to the level that I get it now. But when you are tapped into source, Abraham says it's like liquid love. It's like a feeling of ecstatic bliss that's being channeled through you. You are completely open. And the only thing that you can even compare it to in our human mind would be sex, right? The feeling of that, like when it's coming through, when you are completely open and in flow, it is just a state of sustained ecstatic bliss. Is the way that I can describe it. So when Jeff Tolley was on a few weeks ago, and he spoke about how that feeling of the movement of energy is almost orgasmic, that was not an overstatement of the feeling the energy move, because it is almost to that. It is to that degree. I'm not going to even sugarcoat it. It is. The movement is that, but it is a sustained feeling of that, a sustained state of feeling that. Yeah.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I have to share my experience with the dragon. Okay. And it's so, and Angela, you kind of, you set the stage for this experience. And before you even started sharing the feeling of bliss and everything, I'm like, oh, I got to tell about my dragon experience. So it's an out of body experience. And there's a dragon. I'm looking up and there's a dragon above me, and just the most beautiful dragon I can imagine, light green, beautiful, beautiful dragon. And I felt him come closer to me, because I asked him to come closer so I could be with him. And we merged. And it was the most ecstatic, just like what you were describing, feeling orgasmic bliss. Yeah. And this was merging with this dragon.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Hashtag not jealous. Preston, tell us more about dragons.
Yeah, everyone loves dragons. It's so popular in our culture, and I find that fascinating. My introduction was, of course, The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And I looked upon dragons as, fantasy creatures. And it's a major trope in fantasy fiction. And of course, watched Game of Thrones, which is all about dragons. But then, of course, I started finding out that there is a real element to this in our culture, and that possibly dragons did actually exist, are true creatures. And that fascinated me. I'm like, wow, dragons are real? What? And then I'm so glad, Sharon, you talked about your own dragon experience, because I don't talk about this much, but I had an out-of-body experience that was so wild. I popped out of body and I'm wandering around, what am I going to do? walking through the house, popped out into the backyard, and I looked up and I saw this glowing cloud coming towards me. I'm like, oh, it's a UFO. It's going to come out of this cloud. And it got closer and closer. And then it drops out of the sky, and it wasn't a UFO. It was a dragon. And I couldn't tell you how shocked I was. Because when you're out of body, this is more real than a dream. This is more, it's just like being awake. I mean, you are awake. And to have a dragon drop down into my tiny little postage stamp of a backyard was shocking. And it was a beautiful emerald green dragon, iridescent scales.
Iridescent, yeah.
Oh,
that's
it's most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. And it came right towards me and looked at me, and yes, very stern. It wasn't like a little puppy dog at all. This was a creature of incredible age and wisdom, and brought its head down towards me real close. And being in the presence of that is indescribable.
Yeah.
And I put my hand up and touched its head, and we connected, and it did the most wonderful thing. It put its leg up for me to climb onto its back, and I rode off with it and up into the sky. And it's just the most incredible experience I've ever had in my life. I rode a dragon. It's so crazy. And this is why I don't talk about it, because people think you're nuts. You've been watching too much Game of Thrones. I'm like, well, it's an out-of-body experience. It is what it is. But I loved it, and I will never forget it. And I totally get what you're talking about when you talk about dragons. Wow, so much fun.
Wow, that was sacred, Preston. I feel like you just blessed us with this sacred, holy moment that gives us permission to dream. It gives me permission to dream. I'll speak to that, where it's like, wow, Kat, if you could let go enough, you could have an encounter like that. If you could be humble enough and, move through the fear, you could have an encounter like that. I'm working with honey badger energy, and I don't know if you put honey badger against dragon, who's going to win, because honey badgers are pretty fierce. But this is about as high as I can go right now. I'm going to graduate to dragons at some point. Hashtag not jealous. Okay. Any other thoughts about dragons before I move us forward? Okay, that left me speechless too. All right, so then let us talk to you, amazing lady, Angela Anderson, about your experience with your ET family, because when we were doing our pre-show chat, Angela was like, this is just new within the last 2 months. I'm aware of my ET connections within the last 2 months. Like, that's how fast Angela's awakening has been. So I think it's such a testimony to what can happen when you truly surrender and trust. So would you tell us about your experiences with your ET family, Miss Angela? Because we love ETs on the show. We can't get enough.
So I'll say I wasn't open to that in the very beginning. Just the concept of ET. Like I grew up in the church, so I was familiar with angels, the angelic realm, the Elohim. That was all familiar to me. So getting into the aspect of more galactic beingness, it took a while, right? But I've realized that people have been placed along my path to serve as activators. Like, they could seemingly come out of nowhere and open me up to something new. Like, I had a friend who contacted me out of the blue and said that her guide said that she needed to work with me to bring out these codes. So I went through this whole session with her. I didn't even question it. Like you would think, like maybe a normal person would be like, I should be freaked out and afraid. But no, I knew it was something that I was supposed to do. Like, I knew it was part of the process. So I went through this process with her of receiving these codes that I had to draw on my third eye, right? And that kind of opened me to something new. And so people have been placed in my path in that way, like maybe like a handful of people. But this last person who was placed in my path kind of came out of the blue, seemingly out of the blue, based on me leaving a response in a group, in a Facebook group. So what I would do is to basically get myself in the habit of channeling messages and being able to respond to messages. I would kind of troll through some of the Facebook groups. And when a question was posted that would pique my interest, I would respond. And so I responded to this one question. And as a result of that question, a lady reached out to me. And I'd met this lady, and I hadn't met her before, but speaking with her, it was like I've known her all my life. I've known her all my life, getting into that. And working with her, I came to find out that she was a walk-in. She was a walk-in, and she had these galactic connections. And just speaking with her, like just speaking with her about seemingly nothing, served as an activator for me. And this is how things have been. If I read a book, I can read a book, or I can see something, but it sparks something inside that wakes something up that is ready to be awakened. And so in speaking with her, it's like I woke up to this other aspect, these other aspects of me. And then this is when this energy started to come, and I started to become aware of these galactic energies. And so that's how they started to come to play. I don't see individuals, I feel. So when a presence enters my space, and I know there have been many, there are many all the time, but there are presences that come in that are really big. Some are really small. And so I find myself at times, if I'm sitting up on the computer or something, my head may just look up. So whatever I'm speaking with is super huge and super big. It's not human sized. And so this is kind of how that will, how it will flesh itself out, I guess, in the physical. But I understand now and have learned in the last few months that I'm connected to many star races, Pleiadians, Arcturians, Lyrians, the angelic realm, the archangels. We're all connected to everything. We just don't know it, really. But you have many connections to many aspects of self that exist in infinite numbers of realms and dimensions. So it's all there. It's just a matter of opening to it.
And I wanted to ask you around that. Well, and actually, if I can backtrack just for a moment, because you had said that when you were first connecting to, beings, before you sort of let them just amalgamate into the presence of oneness, so that way you didn't have to get stuck on names. You said there were some names that had startled you or caused you concern that, kind of were an emotional trigger for you. Are you comfortable sharing what any of those names were?
They were names, okay. They were names attached to African deities. And I would say that this fear was a result of how we in the present United States, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, had that fear ingrained in us to fear our innate beingness so that we could be controlled and manipulated. And so that's something that I've recognized as having existed within my DNA, being a woman of color, simply put, that's it. Mm-hmm. And so as a result of that, that's something that I've had to work through. And that's a reason why a lot of minorities, I'll say, carry a sense of fear, because it's been so ingrained. And whether people choose to acknowledge it, know it or not, that memory, that fear gets stored in the DNA until you make the choice to release it and allow it to be removed such that it isn't carried forward. This is how generational curses, what we term as generational curses, get set. It's the trauma that's ingrained in the DNA, and you have to make the choice for its release. So this is how that's played out. This is why I chose not to initially attach to names, because it was what I needed to do in order to free myself to be able to move forward in that respect. And I think even though it may not have been ingrained to that level, the way it was, at least with Africans being brought over to this company to serve, over to this country to serve in this way, we all, to some degree, carry traumas that are generationally based on our heritage, based on our lineage that we can carry within our very DNA. But once you awaken to the truth of your beingness, understand the power that you hold, then you have the power to go and release that. And once you release it, once you make a choice to release it, like we were talking to Amanda last week about the structures that get built on these false perceptions of self that you develop, and they develop these structures that stem from this one single source that get developed over time and space. But once you go and you alleviate that source, reframe that source in a container of love, from a perspective of love, understanding what it is now, understanding what it's always been, and reframing it in that way, all the structures that have been established on that single source get dissolved or reseen or reframed in a sense of love, which provides healing across all time and space for all generations that have been affected by that one misperception of self. Makes sense? So this is how you are able to heal it across your generations, across the self, and how this is the reason why I can go back to instances where I've worked through struggles here in the present, in this lifetime. And I had one instance where I just decided to speak and own it. And I was surrounded by the ancestors, my lineage. And it was not just one or two, it was like thousands of people around me just to say, thank you for standing in your power. But because of the work that you do and the work that you have done, you have served to heal it for all of us, not just yourself, all of us. So we are all here with you in support of you, because as you move and work and breathe and allow yourself to be that which you have been called to be, you help all of us, you move all of us forward into an expanded state of being. Yeah.
So when you're going to write your book, I mean, my God, I just am like I don't, it's like, I don't know. It's just, you talking, you're channeling right now. And it's so like, boom, 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 boom. And you just lay it out so incredibly. And yes, like our genetics are our direct physical portals to the divine. And all of our ancestors live within our genetics, because our genetics are actually multidimensional. And that's what people don't understand. And that is what you are teaching and blowing my head off with. All right, Linda, hop in and I'll stop rambling.
Gotta add one thing. Gotta add one thing. And this was something that happened with you, Kat, when you worked with me on something. My alternate other self, another alternate other self that was a healer, stepped in to help me. And so it happens all the time. It's like we're not just affecting them, they're affecting us. And they're also all part of what we can call on. And so it's just when that really soaks in, I just call my team, hey team, that's my, hey team, whoever you are at this time in this moment. And they show up for some of the most, it's incredible, some of the most mundane things. Like we pack things and we need a shredder that has the long strands. Well, they haven't made those in 20 years, right? They make them all to have high security. But I look all the time. And this last week, it was like, why don't you just ask? I'm looking and I hear, why don't you just ask? It's like, oh yeah. And, and so yesterday I'm driving down the road and I'm going to this spot, and next to it's a Habitat for Humanity. And I see the shredder. And it's like, go get it. And I walked in and I said, where are your shredders? And I said, no, it's none of those. It's not the first time I've done this. No, it's none of those. Do you have another one? And, well, yeah, we've got this old one over here. It's like, that's the one. And he stuck it in and it was this long shredder. And so it's just that ongoing. And people talk about, how do you manifest all this stuff? It's a conversation. And it's just remembering that there's this huge team out there to help us. And it can be a parking space, or it can be something major.
Yeah.
Or a shredder.
Or a shredder.
Oh, if I could jump in real quick,
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add to what Angela just said. It's so profound. And I find that this type of work that you were talking about, Angela, is probably the most important thing we can do for our spiritual and personal growth, is to integrate these parts of us that have been traumatized and are fragmented, I guess, is and this is a big part of my work too. And so, Sananda Kumar is the one who taught me, Jesus, Yeshua, my beloved, is the one who taught me how to do this work, or help me remember how we need to integrate these parts of us. And that's why we feel like we need to keep filling up these voids within us. And there are parts of us that are fragmented and aren't within, right? And what you say is just so profound, and how when we do this, I see it as like dominoes kind of falling, as when we find the crux of something that's getting in our way in life, the rest follows, and it's forward, backward, all around. It's just the most beautiful work we can do for ourselves and help others with, definitely. So thank you for expressing that so profoundly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We already have 2 people signed up to buy your book, Angela, just so you know. So if you can get on that today, that would be great. And then let's talk about people that you're working with, because we're coming toward the close of the show, and I want people to know of course we have everyone's information down below. Preston had to leave us because he's so popular, but we have Preston's info down there, Sharon's info is down there, our info is down there, and of course Angela's info is down there. And so what can people look to experience when they work with you directly, Angela? Can you kind of give people a sense of what that looks like if they're curious with what you're doing?
I would say carry no expectation, because right now, everybody that I've worked with has been different. I don't carry a cookie cutter model for working with individuals. It's as it comes, like literally. No 2 people I've worked with since I started working with people has been the same. So what I do is, what is common with the way that I work with people is, I have my team, and sometimes your team would meet me beforehand or in the moment, but there's a collaboration that takes place, I say, up here. And we get together and collaborate and bring forth what you need to hear in the moment. Sometimes that out pictures as just a conversation, we're talking, and there are activations that can take place in a simple conversation, and then being able to work through things. And then sometimes it's just energy work. So I've done one session where it was just silent, and it's just me moving energy, helping somebody to see in that way. Or it could be anything. It could be light language. It could be me speaking, because light language has the ability to bypass the logic. And so a person needs to be reached if they are really left-brained, really, really logical and analytical. Then there are some things that may need to be shared that bypass that logic to help activate what's ready to be activated for the person. So that's what's common, but the way in which I work with an individual is specific to that individual. I don't have a clear cut, I follow this role that we're going to do this and this. Nope, it's whatever is needed in the moment is how that works.
Awesome. And then on that note, I think a great way to close this out, if you are still willing and available, and I think that you are, would you do some light language and body movement channeling for us at this juncture, Angela?
Yes, and yeah, we can do that. We can do
That's
that.
amazing. All right. I'm going to mute myself, and everyone just let Angela take her time to do this, and then it'll all flow. So let's just hold space for the moment.
He sarabagito shati samai esutrabakai te torabai in te shunitrakai o he trabagito pitra ma in cetrubita toe efeturkai to shimai turkai intero ma in te soraba efe des ai tu saropai tu shimai te kotaita desire to with by itse shotra pai e fitra kodusta ta ma ain dero pitra hoe e fitra go shinte tuta by in dero go fitra goe my in je tu paita to shitra goe mi ai tu sadre mind dero cafe di sora by in je tu tita dora Pushandel gotisha ma inte shuna terapeta besare tushita gafeta mushare tora paita besare tushetra gafeta dora ma esitre tuta desisa trupa for a true shiny trapinta rapita Pisare tu charnita desidre goshantere geta pisara tu tira vai intera sujeta tisara pohite tisimitra kohite tura pura za intera kisora pai pi isera teshite putra fare toshetra kotisha tura Visesa preto ma intero pitra katesho treza. Da intero kitara ma inteturia. Pe isero pitra kushan terkote petra. Pe ise tu chitar kota fora fai chite dura pita. Pe isero minter kite shotra. Fisare tu she chita kitra. Fora piceto distara pai intero kitra. Pisaro tu shintero tita. Tisara fitra ku sintera kai fitra. De hidre fora tisa. De hintero kito misara dustera fitra koita. Tisera pizze dura. Ma eso nitre tu tistara ka petra koita. Bisera cotisteto mi seto rito pisaro cue feto nistera de cataro petara cotistera caintero tistora pai. Pa isora petre tu stera mi sara tu tristo petiste disidre tu stera mai pisteto pai de histeto kitra pequisho mai intero catate. Behitre cutatai. Baeta ture cavai she tura mais sera tarito pitre. De hintera quechura ti sera tusha mi sara tu. E sera pitre sora fara tushite tushin tara tusha. Basero tishora mai he tu rita para dura. Bahinder quita be e sare tu shera mind teragura fight chuplata. Be he sera maite di sera pistara disla. Da hindero tishora by e te dura. Masero brita ite. Tu sidra foi. Disera disto, disera disto, disera disto, etc. Ai, ai, ai.
Wow.
back.
Yeah. You become radiant. Like I mean, you're a good looking gal. When you're channeling the light, it's like you become so, transcendent. It's just, it's amazing. It's amazing. What do you experience when you were doing that? Because it's part of it I can see is like almost conversational. It's like, and now I'm telling you this, and now I'm giving you this massive blessing. It's like, it's like my objective experience of it. What is your experience of it as the channeler?
It's that blissful feeling. And there's also at times I'm like, oh, that is so cool. Like I'm sitting in the back of myself and saying, oh my God, that is so cool. That feels so cool. That is so cool. It's kind of like overwhelming. Like I'm sitting in the back like a little kid. I'll tell you this. Once I had this dream, and I know my guides manifest themselves physically sometimes. And I had this period of time where this cardinal, I didn't care where I was in the house, it would find the window where I was and sit in the window. Always, right? Cardinal just sitting in the window. And I still have that now, but now I have a tree full of cardinals that are just at my house. But I had this dream when it was really happening so consistently. I had this dream where I was standing on my balcony and the cardinal came. And I was talking, I was standing with the cardinal, but I didn't know if the cardinal was my size or if the cardinal was my size or if I was the size of the cardinal. I didn't know, but because we were the same size, the cardinal started to speak. And so as the cardinal started to speak, and I recognized it as one of my guides in the dream, as the cardinal started to speak, that human side of me was like, holy shit, you speak, you can talk. And so I was so excited about the fact that it was talking that I started to dance. And I started to do that, that break dancing move where you start to do that move like that. So I'm doing this move like that and dancing and saying, oh my God, you speak. And they're like, oh, let's let her wake up. Let's just let her wake up. And so I woke up. There are times when I'm channeling and I feel myself in the background acting in that way, being so excited that I'm dancing in the background because it's just so cool. It's just so cool. Yeah.
That's so adorable.
Yeah.
Sharon, Linda, do you have reflections before we move to closing?
I just felt like we were given a master class on how to communicate beyond words.
Wow.
How to pull in and how to express that, where it comes from, where it comes into. A couple other people were saying that as well. So it was just beautiful. Awesome. We had a question: when you're doing this with people, are you able to have them ask questions during it, or is it?
Oh yeah, they can ask questions. Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Linda, are you is this a good time to jump in?
Yes.
If you're okay.
Absolutely.
I don't want to interrupt a thought stream because I know how that happens to me sometimes. I'm like, oh, where did it go? That channel was so beautiful, Angela. I just felt the energy, and like Kat said, you're just glowing, you're radiant. It was so beautiful. Especially, towards the end, I felt this blessing from the beings that you were channeling, this huge blessing from them. And I just felt, it was bringing me to tears.
Yeah,
just really beautiful. Thank you so much. And
awesome.
And thank you for sharing your experiences and your story and all your wisdom. Wow, I agree with Linda. This is definitely a master class on how to bring in the higher energies and walk through our fears.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Goodness. So now, let's go ahead and we're gonna wrap up. And have no fear, Angela's gonna be back as a regular co-host. So if you're like, Angela, don't leave us, she's part of the family, as is Sharon. And of course, Linda is permanent until she decides she's not. But let's go ahead and we'll toss the mic to Linda. I'll switch us over into our Brady Bunch view. So Sharon, stop picking your nose. Just kidding. Uh, and Linda, if you want to start to lead us out.
I will. Thank you for the great conversation again, as always, off to the side. You guys are beautiful, every single one of you. I love you so much. And make sure you check out, if you want to get hold of Angela, she's in our Facebook group, so you can get in there. Also, look at her Facebook group, look at the connections that we all have listed down below, so you can find it all easily. And thank you again for joining us. And we will see you next week. And Kat is going to tell us all about that.
Yeah. So next week we have John Mathis, and John Mathis is an NDEer as well. So we are going, and so John Mathis was brought to me by Seashell, Michelle Ambergy. So she's going to be on the show next week. John Mathis is just freaking funny. Like, he's a natural comedian. He's even as he's telling you his experience, you're cracking up because he's just a natural storyteller. So it's going to be so much fun. And it's going to be great. I can already feel it. It's going to feel so fun. So please do join us. And then finally, of course, hit that like button if you enjoyed our show today. Hit the notification bell. So that way you can, well, first hit the subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, please do that. Hit the notification bell so you can know when we go live. Not always on time. We do our best, but sometimes we're early, sometimes we're late. And then finally, I just want to again thank Angela and her divinity for showing us how to do it. Thank you for showing us how to do it, Angela. It's just mind-blowing. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Linda. Thank you to all of our live streamers. We have so many that were in today that were just, we love you guys. We love our community. Please join our Facebook group so we can love you more. And that's all I got to say. So with that, goodbye, everyone. We love you. I come back next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Mwah.